Welcome back to another episode of On the Subject. I'm your host, Michael Vilardo, co-founder and CEO of subject.com. You know where to find us. And today we have an incredible guest. We have a lifelong educator who also has a family household of superintendent stars. Very big power couple and an incredible innovator who has been able to share so much wisdom with us off camera that we had to get him on camera. His name is Michael Chavez, superintendent of Catch. This is the chili capital of the world. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, super excited to have you. And again, thank you for all that you've done for students and teachers over the year. We had an incredible episode with your other colleague, and she was so excited about the support you've given her. So it just shows you don't only have students, teachers, again, your household, you're impacting so many people directly and indirectly. And so we're really indebted to you. And that's where we always want to start is like, what made you want to get into education? How did you do it?
Education was not my first choice. Thought I'd come out of high school, go into college and go into some field and business related or something like that. And it wasn't until later that I saw a friend of mine who really had an impact on me and who kind of went the wrong way. And we kind of grew up together and incredible athlete. And of course, I was always into athletics and kind of lost touch. But he got in trouble with the law. And so the question that I always had for myself was, why did he go down this one path and why did I choose another? And what was different about my experience that he didn't have? And so it really made me think about the impact of adults in education and the influence that we have on kids. And so after I was in college for a year, I decided I needed to get back and I needed to go into education.
I love that. It's beautiful. What's your favorite sports? What makes you passionate about sports? Sports.
Well, right now it's soccer, but growing up it was football.
Nice. Did you play in high school?
I played in high schools. I played football and played basketball, and and I learned so much about leadership, and I was blessed to have great coaches. And so I was always the quarterback of the team.
Oh, wow. Let's go. We got QB1 in the house today.
Yeah. I don't know. But, there's a lot of the responsibility gets placed on that position because you've got to know everything, what's going on. And so leadership just kind of fell into place with that. And
I love that. And that's one thing I always talk about, that coaches and teachers, both, they're the heroes of society and they're really helping the leaders of tomorrow. And can you talk about that, how important both your athletics, your in-school experience, but then also even your experience with your friend, like how holistic education is. And sometimes we try to academicize it too much and say, hey, it's sitting at a desk 8 hours a day, but there's really a lot of ways to educate people. And there's so much more that goes into a student's brain than just in the classroom.
Hey, there's so much in education. And I say the number one thing that we've got to get right is understanding how important relationships are with kids.
Yes.
And it's relationships. And if you don't have relationships, nothing else falls in place. And so it starts with that. And so you always hear about coaches and the impact that they have on the kid. Well, it's because of the relationships that they have with kids. You hear about the teachers and you see these Hollywood movies of teachers. And it's the relationship that they build with their kids. And so above everything else, it's got to be relationships.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's why, like, with our company, we really try to give the teacher as much one-on-one time with the student as possible. Like, we could be able to provide more core curriculum or more of the substance of the classroom and allow teachers more one-on-one time, because it's proven statistically that by far the most impactful part of a student journey is how much one-on-one time they get with a teacher or tutor. Problem is that's not very equitable because not many people can afford to have a tutor. Not many teachers can afford the time to get one-on-one time with the student because the teacher to student ratio can be challenging. How do we carve out more opportunities for our students to build emotional relationships with their teachers, like especially some of the things you've done at your school, so innovative, doing some of these incredible career pathways? How has that helped build more teacher-student relationships?
Well, you got to come from a common place, right? I mean, what interests kids? Because you can say, I'm going to build relationships through the academic piece. And most teachers, especially at the secondary level, they're teaching their subject because that's what they're passionate about, right? But not all kids are maybe passionate about that one subject, right? And so you've got to find something in common. You've got to find that hook with kids. And then once you develop that relationship, then you can start looking at other things and moving into different areas. So what motivates kids? What are they interested in? And so sometimes it's just practicing empathy in the sense of looking through things through the child's lens, through their lens of what they see and how they experience things, how they process things. And sometimes it's just getting a little silly with them.
Have fun.
You can't take yourself too seriously.
I agree with that all the way. So what do you think has been the biggest difference over the course of your career in educating students from 15, 20 years ago versus the students today? How have they changed?
Well, technology has just changed everything.
It's changed a lot, yeah.
And so I started at a time where cell phones were just coming on board.
The flip phone?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
The
good
old flip
times.
phones. And well, and you remember the old...
Yes, those are great.
And so things have changed a lot since then. Cell phones have changed. Technology has changed. Just the access to information has changed. And again, as we've seen things change over time, one of the things that we really impress upon our teachers is you've got to change with the times because kids are different. And so how they process information is different. It's not the same as it was 20, 30 years ago. And so sometimes education, just like many other things, it's slow to catch up and get ahead, except that the challenge for us now is that technology is moving so quickly that we've got to be on top of it because we talk about the paradigm shift that needs to happen with teachers and in education, where it used to be that teachers were the holder of knowledge. And what you did is you shared your knowledge with kids, and then you had kids regurgitate and many times regurgitate that information back. But what really needs to happen now is you've got to be a facilitator of learning, and you've got to have kids explore. They've got to experience it, and that's when learning really happens. That's where the magic is.
Yeah, I love that you just put it so eloquently, so well spoken. But you talk about how kids are changing, and we always have to adjust to the learner. We can't try to force the learner to stay rigid with what we did in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. We need to adjust to the student of, Gen Alpha just entered high school. So Generation Alpha, it's the youngest birth year of freshman year of high school. It's pretty wild how fast time is moving. How has your relationship with technology companies changed as this shift? Because there's so many out there, and I'm sure it's overwhelming for a superintendent because you're getting a million cold calls, a million cold emails. Some are good companies, some are bad companies. How do you filter out the noise and handle all that?
I don't know. I think we're still trying to learn from it.
Yeah.
What do you bring in? What do you leave out? It's hard determining which are the good ones, which are the bad ones.
It's really hard. Yeah.
And then you have just different aspects from kids' perspective. They're so much into social media.
They love social media.
And social media can be a good thing, and it can also be a good
Completely agree. It's a tough mental health environment. But it is a super powerful communication tool.
Yes, absolutely. It's like anything else, it's a tool. And you can use that tool in a good way, or you can choose to fight that tool. And so it's hard because you have a lot of people that right now in education, the banning of cell phones in schools.
Yeah, what's your stance on that?
I think we've got to show limits.
Yep.
And one of the things that we try to get across to our parents is you've got to have limits. It's like anything else. Yep. Kids have got to understand what limits are. Yeah. And so schools are no different. And so kids depend on social media, whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
Always a reality. It's there. And so let's teach kids responsible use, and let's teach it within limits, and let's teach them what responsible use is.
I love the approach, and I think it's so important to just acknowledge the reality. Netflix turned 27 years old this year. These kids have grown up with Netflix, Instagram, YouTube. Now they have TikTok. They have a different way of engaging with the world, and it's really important for us to acknowledge it. You wouldn't ask someone to go be able to watch a silent movie this weekend.
Right.
And we would all be like, wait, what's going on here? I was watching all these incredible movies. Now I have to watch a silent movie. But sometimes it's tough because it's harder with age to change your perspective. And so with these young people who are so agile, it's so great to find innovative educators like yourself who really want to help them. What do you think you would like to see in education change the most within the next 10 years? Where would you like to see your district, other districts, or even systemic changes? How can we make education even more engaging and fun for learners and teachers?
Well, this is my 31st year in education.
And congratulations. Thank you again for everything you've done.
Thank you. Over that time, see things that work, and you see things that maybe we shouldn't be doing. And so where we are today and where we're at in the Hatch Valley Public Schools and leading the district is so much of it. I came into the district with just all the good things that I experienced over the years. And I wanted to see about, okay, can I take the different pieces of what worked, what was good, and apply them to a bigger system within a district. And so I've seen everything from bilingual education and the impact, and not just the impact on kids and having that as an asset, to make them employable and marketable, but also the cognitive benefits
So many.
of bilingual education. And so I've seen where kids, when they're proficient in two languages, they outperform even their monolingual, speaking students. And so I've always have said, when we talk about school improvement, we never talk about the implementation or the expansion of dual language programs. And so when we know that if we're being held accountable to test scores, which I don't always agree with, and it's not that test scores aren't important, but I think there's a much bigger picture that needs to be looked at. And I think sometimes from the federal to the legislative, state legislative arenas, we've got to think bigger. We've got to think bigger than just test scores. And that's how we're measured, those test scores. But, the reality is that we're always going to have kids that are not proficient. And so what do we do for those kids? Is the message that we share with them that they're failures? Well, life is bigger. And that's one of the things that we always try to put across in our district is that our role as educators is bigger. It's bigger than just the classroom. It's bigger than a textbook. It's bigger than a test score. And so what we want to do is we really want to impact kids for life. We want to give them the tools that they need to be successful. Another area is career tech education, CTE. But one of the things that I started noticing with CTE was the high graduation rate of kids that are in these programs.
That's amazing.
And so you have 94% graduation rate.
Wow.
And you always think, okay, well, if we get those kind of results from kids that are in a CTE program, why would we expand that program? Why wouldn't we do more with that? And so those are just two programs.
What's the restriction there, you think? Time, money, buy-in from stakeholders? Like, why not?
I think it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I went into the superintendency was to find out for myself, what are these barriers?
Yeah.
We know there's a lot of good things out there and a lot of successful programs, but what is it? What's holding us back as a state, let's say, for example? And I think it is. It's a systemic process that is lacking in so many different areas. We're not aligned to really be able to take advantage of that and move forward. Sometimes it's just attitudes. And I mentioned paradigm shift earlier. We really need a big paradigm shift. We've got to make sure that we understand that our success as educators is reflected in many different ways and not just in test scores and that sort of thing. Because I say this all the time, we always hear New Mexico we're last in education. But I suspect with certainty, I can say that every single high school in the state of New Mexico has kids that graduate and go off and do amazing things. And Hatch is no different. We get kids that graduate, go off and do amazing things. They're successful in life. They have careers that are successful. But were all those kids proficient? Probably not. And so there's so much more. It's not to downplay education and academics. Absolutely important. But we know that there's a bigger picture. There's a bigger purpose. And one of the things we talk about in the Hatch Valley Public Schools is it's real simple. We just want to improve the quality of life of our kids.
I love that.
And what does that mean? Well, it means different things for different kids because of the backgrounds that they come from. For some kids, it's just coming to school and graduating. For some kids, it's college. For some kids, it's entering the workforce and being able to sustain their family or support themselves. And so it's different things. It's those ideas. And that's what we've tried to bring to the Hatch Valley is these different programs that are successful and implement them in a way that kids are familiar with. And so for us, it was very natural to come from an agricultural perspective because every kid in the Hatch Valley is either directly or indirectly impacted by agriculture. They're touched by it in some way. And so it only made sense for us to really focus on agriculture because that's something that we can meet in the middle and something that kids already have some knowledge about. And so that's what we try to do. Everything that we do with our CTE programs comes from an agricultural perspective.
I love that. And so there's two last things I want to make sure we get to talk about because this has been such an incredible conversation and I love getting to learn from you. And one thing we talk about at Subject and across our mission, helping students and teachers is it takes a lot of work. It's not easy. And you talked about how you actually have an apartment near school, so that way if it gets to be a late night, you could stay nearby. That's truly all in on helping kids. Like, how did you come to that? Because there's a lot of, pretty polarizing debate these days around work-life balance and, all these initiatives, which full respect, and there's a lot of great opportunities for that. But you're putting your kids even ahead of your own family life sometimes by staying in another town. How did you come to that conclusion? And thank you for what you're doing for those students. They deserve it.
Thank you. It was one of those things where when I was hired to be the superintendent at Hatch, it's one of the things that I knew that I would have to do. I'd have to make sure that the community understood that I was in, and it makes a big difference. So, but I was also very clear that my home was in Deming.
Yeah.
So 50 miles away.
That's far. Yeah. That's a hike. Yeah.
Dude, it's one of those things where, yes, there's always activities that are going on that go into the evening. And so everything from parent nights and festivals and just different activities along those lines, but also athletics. Yep. Athletics are a huge part of what goes on, especially in the Hatch Valley. And so being able to stay there and have a place to stay there, yes, it does make a big difference, and people do notice. So it's important. So I stay in the Hatch Valley 2-3 days a week. And the other times is I'm back in Deming. That's kind of my home base. And as I mentioned, my wife is the superintendent over in Deming Public Schools.
It's amazing. I love that you have that dialogue at home and probably make each other better.
Well, I don't know. Sometimes it's better. Sometimes no. We certainly support each other, and we've been very blessed over the years, and that is one area that we can support each other. When we have a bad day, we're dealing with those challenges. We understand each other. We understand what's going on, and so we're able to support each other in that way.
That's beautiful. And so if you were to speak to your 31 years ago self when you entered education, what would you tell that person? How would you be able to soothe or make them even more happy and successful with their path in education?
I would say, recognize the importance of relationships above everything else in education.
Relationships are everything. And Michael, I'm really thankful for you joining us today and us starting a relationship. And I'm very inspired by what you're doing, and please continue to be innovative, take risks, and push the boundaries of education, because there's not enough of that happening nationally. And so if you could do that on a localized level, it could really impact a lot of people, and I really appreciate it. All of us appreciate it at On the Subject. Again, you can find us on YouTube and Spotify. On the Subject. I'm your host, Michael Vilardo. Please click like, subscribe, and thank you so much for having us today. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.